Hello and welcome back to another episode of the Blue is the New White podcast. Today's guest is badly needed in the skilled trades. Someone who I've actually gotten to know pretty well over the past year or so. Mr. Nick Anderson of Chosen Leader joins us today to talk all about his incredible journey to get where he is today. I wish I could say that it was all sunshine and roses and all of that, but it's not. It is, though, lessons learned and reality, the truth about life, and more importantly, how to overcome that and let it shape you. Nick has been influential in my organization and is clearly an expert in his craft. So join us today to hear all about the importance of leadership in the blue-collar skilled trades and how our industry can benefit drastically from these specific skill sets. And as always, don't forget to subscribe to this channel and on our website at blueisthenewwhite.com to receive all the latest updates. You can now find this podcast on iHeartRadio, SiriusXM, and Pandora. As always, we rely on the word of mouth from our listeners to further the mission. So if you enjoy the episode today, please take a moment to rate it, review it, and share it with your friends. The future generations of tradespeople depend on it. They depend on you. So thank you again and enjoy this episode of Blue is the New White with Nick Anderson. Hello and welcome back to another episode of Blue is the New White. I've got an awesome guest for us here today, Mr. Nick Anderson, somebody that I have gotten a chance to know over the past year or so through the amazing social media networks, right? I think it originated on Twitter, but now we have become even closer since then, and he's been able to ingrain some really incredible characteristics into some of the people, some of the leaders here in my organization. I'm really excited to get to talk to him today and share with you all, my audience, what he's all about and the importance of leadership in this blue-collar space that we all live in. So without further ado, Nick, man, welcome to the Blue is the New White podcast, sir.
Thank you so much. Thank you. I feel like particularly special because I'm looking at your office and I'm like, I've been there. I've seen that. It's like, it's familiar. That's cool.
Yeah.
Even though we're 1,000 miles away.
That's right, man. That's right.
So good.
I really appreciate you coming on. I know you're a busy guy, and not all of my listeners know who you are. I have actually shared a few things out about our experiences together, and I've gotten some responses on that as well. So I know that some of my listeners out there may know of you or who you are, on that sense. But for those who don't, can you give us the rundown on who is Nick Anderson? How'd you get to where you are today, man? Who are you?
Yeah, thanks for that question. I joke and I'm serious. I say, well, it all started when I was a little boy. but the truth is, it all started when I was a little boy. And I'll just get real with you because we've been there, and I think it's the way I see the world is if I'm going to listen to somebody talk, I want to know just exactly who the F this person is, right? Like, tell me right away. So that's what I'm going to do. When I was 4 years old, I grew up in a home with a father who was both mentally ill and chemically dependent. And my mom told him to leave. And I didn't understand at 4 years old why daddy was leaving. I can picture it right now, just vividly standing on the front porch and watching him go and being angry at my mom, being sad about him and feeling abandoned, right? You talk about who is Nick, that little boy, still a part of me. For 6 years, my dad was a weekend dad, and my mom, there were a couple of boyfriends, but eventually she found the one and remarried to the man whom I call dad today. But my birth father, when I was 10, he succumbed to his illnesses and afflictions and chose to end his life in suicide. And here again, who's this guy talking to Josh? Well, that's a part of it too. That 10-year-old boy is a part of me. And again, there was this feeling of abandonment, and all of this is relevant. I assure you, this isn't, I'm not just talking to talk. That 10-year-old boy that tried to answer the question, the impossible question of why wasn't I good enough for my father to choose to stay alive, right? That's a part of my persona, my personality that still exists today. But I went on to live what I call a normal American life. In fact, my first Twitter handle was a normal American life. And it was anonymous, right? And I was posting, stuff. I lived in the suburbs just north of Seattle in Washington State, with a mom and a dad. At least it looked all normal to the outside, right? And I was loved, and I lived, played sports, grew up, did things. My dad had the coolest job in the world, and I don't think I've said that enough. Like he grew up turning wrenches on airplanes, but the man could build anything. Right? Can build anything. So he worked for this company called Fabrication Specialties, and they built art. So imagine an architect designs a home or a building, and a contractor builds it. In his world, an artist would design art on a massive scale, big, huge. They put wings on the side of a building, like big wings, and they built them. And they would build things out of metal and glass, and I mean, just any medium. And so. Yeah, that was Dad. We turned wrenches on cars together. We built some stuff, and yeah, like I say, normal American life. Right? I played sports. I fell in love with the girl next door, even though she wasn't in love with me. But I chased her around the block all the time, and had that broken heart and all that stuff. But there was the part of me still that was like really damaged from this boyhood experience. At 4 and at 10, and despite being a really smart kid. Right. Like I got good grades and everything. I got disenchanted with school. Like I started out with like really good grades, and then they plummeted. And so I ended up leaving my high school campus early without a diploma. And I walked into a local bank, and I filled out an application and got a job. I got hired as a bank teller when I was 17. I didn't go a traditional route. What's very interesting, though, is when I showed up for my first day on the job, I put on, a button-up shirt and a tie, and people made all kinds of assumptions about me. They thought I was older than I was. They thought I was college educated. Didn't even think to ask if I graduated high school, let alone still, and the thing is, I just let them believe whatever they wanted to believe about me. And I kind of stepped into this persona, right? My career in banking was I climbed the corporate ladder pretty quickly. Mostly because.
Can we pause for a sec?
Yeah.
All right. So I like to pause in places where it's easy to keep the spot, right? Because I've got a couple of questions so far. So, when you say your dad, you said fabrication specialists. Is that what it was called?
Fabrication specialties. That's right.
Specialties. Yeah. Okay. So
it was
I want to elaborate a little bit on that, because I think that this is a little bit fascinating, right? Yeah. You said that he built art. Okay, and I'm picturing like the art that you see in like cityscapes and stuff like that on the sides of buildings. Right. You don't think that there's somebody that actually has to mount that, screw it into the structure? Is that what you're saying that he did? Like, or actually design? Yes, and.
Yeah, so they weren't the designers.
Okay.
Right?
Okay.
There's the crazy artist missing an ear that had the sketch pad, right? That had the drawing, and they'd come in and, can you build this, right? Or they would get a contract from the city to build the art. Mm-hmm. And it would be fabricated. It would be constructed in this warehouse in the industrial district of Seattle, right? And taken all over the world. They would do installations all over the world. And then there was a maintenance end to it also. In Seattle, there is a monument called the Hammering Man, and it's like, I don't know, 60 feet tall, maybe 40 feet tall. And there are a few of these installations around the world. My dad was the guy that once a year would go up in a genie. And change the oil in the arm, because it had this articulating arm that would be hammering, and he would change the oil. And then just about every time the local newspaper would take a picture, and the Hammering Man is getting oil on its arm, and that would be my dad up there.
That is fascinating. That's an avenue that I don't think we've talked yet about on this show. So that's why I'm kind of curious about it. And I'm most curious. How old were you at this point when your dad was doing this? Were you like high school, a little younger?
Yeah. So I mean, he was in this. He was with FS for you know, about 30 years. He was naval airplane mechanic. And then did some work in Ketchikan, working on planes, and then went to FS. So it was all the whole time that I knew him. So yeah.
Okay. And what was your throughout this tenure when you thought about what he did for a living? What was your perception of that? What were your feelings?
Well, like I said, it was the coolest job in the world because he was always going somewhere, doing something different and building something new. And like I said, he could build anything, right? Like we never hired anybody to do anything around the house, right? It was Dad. And I mean, even to the extent that when I was, I may have been 19, could have been 20. He bought a 1968 Camaro, and when I say bought a 1968 Camaro, like I borrowed a buddy's truck and we put it on a flatbed because it was in the back pasture of somebody's, field, right? And then my dad literally built a garage around the car. Right? So he bought the car and then he built this 20 by 30 garage that was going to house the restoration of this car, and that was going to be his retirement project. Now, unfortunately, about 10 years ago, he was diagnosed with Parkinson's, and that affected his ability to, because he got the shakes in the hands, and just really limited. So there's a whole story with that car. Short story is my mom was like, well, you have to sell the car because we're not, you're not going to be able to do anything with it. And after a little while of this nonsense, I said, just give me the keys to the car. And I had a buddy pick it up and take it to a mechanic. And I said to my mechanic, I said, here's the car. And this thing was like, in pieces, flatbed, right? I said, I don't want it back until it's all done. And if you have a question about what to do, ask my dad. So it took 18 months, but he got his car.
That's amazing. Yeah. That's awesome.
Good.
I love that story. Okay, the last question on this, and then I want to continue with your journey.
Yeah.
What was your dad's perception of what he did for a living? How did he portray it to you?
Man, he was so humble. And is like, he's still alive. He's still super humble. And like, even to this day, if there's anything that I need, like he'll build it. He'll create it. He'll make it. And I just know, I'm like, hey, I need a thing that does this. Yeah. Okay. Go in the garage. See you in an hour. Like, comes back. Right. So he wouldn't talk about it. He wouldn't brag on it, but I'll tell you what, so FS is no longer in existence. The owners are retired. The owners are now in their mid 70s. And they didn't, there wasn't a continuation of the business. They put together this like coffee table book of all of the work and this thing is like thick of the work that they did all over the world. And every now and again, he'll pull it out and you can see the pride, and he'll tell the backstory. Oh yeah, when we were on this job, you should have seen Larry. He cut the piece short. I'm like, that son of a, like, talk about they're digging a foundation for something, and like, it was fucking rock, like the stories are there, and it's all in this book, and that's cool, man.
That's amazing.
So cool.
That's a very cool way.
I'll take my kids. We went on vacation. We went to, just the one that comes to mind is we were in airport in Texas, in San Antonio, and there's installations there that Grandpa put in. We'd be walking and you see Grandpa built that, right? Like, I can point to things around the world and say to my kids, yeah, Grandpa built that. you know?
That's amazing, and that's something we talk about on this show, right? Is the pride of tradespeople, right? And it doesn't have to be beautiful sculptures like this, right? It's you're driving down the street, and that's a building I worked on, or I installed all the fixtures in that place, or that business I put all the HVAC units on the roof. I mean the sense of pride, in a lot of these industries is amazing, and rightfully so. Because it's something that you can step back, you can look at the whole thing and say, I did that.
I did that. Yep.
So that's great. That's why I answer awesome, or that's why I ask rather, but awesome information there. Let's continue on with your journey. You were 17 years old. You were working in a bank. People thought that you were a college grad because you wore a tie.
Yeah.
What happened next?
Yeah. And I will say too, like, I was moonlighting as a sandwich artist at Subway, working 2 jobs to pay rent. But I was promoted and asked to take on some leadership roles and introduced to kind of formal leadership study, leadership training. And for whatever reason, that's where my passion was. That's where like my purpose, like I just leaned into this stuff. And I would listen to the guys that were my mentors that were 20, 30 years older than me. And they would speak about how rewarding it was to give back to that next generation, like to be pouring into me the things that they had learned. And on some level, when I was younger, I was skeptical of that. I'm like, you're just saying that, because it's altruistic and it sounds good. And like, but here now at this season of my life, I'm like, I totally get it. Right. And I thought when I'm there, I want to be like those guys. And so that really left a mark. So yeah, I mean, I'm having success in my career. Like I said, started when I was 17, and I became a branch manager for the first time at 21. I was an assistant manager at 19. And so that was the first time I was like officially the boss of anyone, right? In a leadership role. And I was supervising people that were twice my age. And there's a whole host of challenges that came along with that. So, if I condense the whole career thing down, like there was a lot of success. And it was to the point where my wife, whom I met at the bank, I don't know how often this happens, around the shop and in the trades, if people, meet the love of their life there, but it happened all the time in banking, man. Like it was incestuous. And so, yeah, we met, fell in love, got married, made babies. And career was good. I was doing well. She stopped working. She was raising the kids, and we were living that normal American life. And it was good. And then I mean, there's an and then, a curveball that not many would predict, but it was 2016, February 2016. And we were out taking a walk. She was hit by a car and didn't survive. Kids were 9 and 5 at the time, and as you can imagine, my whole world fell apart, upside down, unraveled. On some level, I told myself this story that, based on my own lived experience, my own childhood, losing my father when I was 10, I was somehow equipped to help lead my kids, my boys through this experience. And maybe I was, but I wasn't equipped personally to handle the loss. Right. I held it together, and actually poured most of my energy into my work. So my career actually progressed and accelerated even more. And at the time, though, like, here's something. At the time, I was like really out of shape, like bad, man. I was over 300 pounds on the scale. Drank too much and ate too much. Right. I made this really clear decision that like I have to change my life because I have to stay alive because I'm the last one that's here for my kids. And it took time. It was about a 5 year journey because I immediately went from mountaintop to valley,
Yeah.
right, in 24 hours, and it was about a 5 year journey to come out of that valley. And at the end of that, I realized that my purpose is to help people develop leadership skill. That's been my purpose for 2.5 decades, 25 years, and it's crystal clear. And my call, like I'm called into that purpose, doing the work that I'm doing now. So to kind of wrap up that part of the story, I had a mentor, a man named Bill Robinson, and he was a leadership guy, the son of a Southern Baptist preacher. Bill was 6'2" and the best dressed man you'd ever see. He always, suit and tie and scarf and fedora, right? Just a sharp looking man. And he would give this leadership sermon where he spoke of leadership being a choice. He'd say, leadership is a choice. And he would say it really loud. Leadership is a choice. And I came to the conclusion that leadership is the choice of a person with free will to follow another. Leadership is the choice of the follower. And I go on to say that leadership only occurs or only can occur when one person of free will chooses to follow another. A leadership guru expert, John Maxwell, said that if you think you're leading but no one is following, you're just taking a walk. And so I have this hypothesis that leaders are not just born nor built, but to lead, one must be chosen. And that is, where the chosen leader brand comes from. And so to conclude who is this guy that Josh is talking to story is, at the end of that 5 year journey of coming out of the valley and getting healthy and getting my head straight, I'm able to show up in integrity and confidence and security. And I'm enjoying the best that life has to offer. And so, the good news story at the end of all of that tragedy is that I'm enjoying life with a wonderful, beautiful woman and her daughters and my sons, and we're a Brady Bunch family, and it's a real love story. So there is there's a happy ending here. Yeah. And that's me. Thanks for asking. Thanks for the space to share all that.
No, I think it's important, and especially to kind of putting a cap on that, because I don't know all my listeners. I don't know where they're at, at what point in their life, if they're on a mountain or in a valley right now. But I think stories like that are a good reminder that to keep course, right? To not break stride. There is a light at the end of the tunnel if you so choose. And I think that's powerful and important. So I'm glad that you told that story. And I think it's incredible that it led you to where you are today, because where you are today, I think I've told you this before, just one-on-one, but I can tell that you are doing what you were meant to do. So to kind of put a cap on that, but
100%.
So let's pivot this a little bit and talk a little bit. Well, I have a couple questions first, as I normally do. Right?
Yeah, good.
So when you were assistant manager at 19, you started at this bank at 17, assistant manager at 19, branch manager at 21, only a few years in between each one of those promotions. Did you know from a young age that leadership was something that you wanted to pursue? Did you feel like it pulling or a calling of some kind, like, hey, this is something that I enjoy? Or was that not till later in life and looking back on those circumstances?
Great question. There's a mix here. A part of it, candidly, was I wanted to make money.
Sure.
So I was financially motivated, and getting promoted to that was a way, right? There's a part of it that um, may have been ego that was like, I want the title, I want the recognition. And I say may have been, but really, a part of the reason that I tell my whole story, beginning with childhood, is because I'm aware that uh, that little boy that felt abandoned, that felt like he wasn't good enough, is where this super competitive part of my persona comes from. Is that I feel like I always have to be the best, otherwise I'm going to lose the people that are close to me in my life, and it borderline, is unhealthy. If I'm aware of it and I can use it to serve me, then that's good, because I'm competitive as what, right?
Yeah.
Um, but if it gets out of control, that can be a thing. So getting promoted and advancing and being the best, right, is a part of my makeup, and I know where that comes from. But then there's this other part that was when I was on a soccer team. I was 9 years old. They gave me a leadership award, and it wasn't like everybody got a trophy kind of thing. This was a little bit before that era.
Uh-huh.
It was a novel award, like nobody else got this, right? And I played goalkeeper on the soccer team, and I was shouting out like the captaining the team from all the way, in the back, right? So that might show up as leadership, but here's what I think it really came down to is I wanted the responsibility of being the last person the other team had to go through to get a goal. I wanted that responsibility. And a friend of mine used the term with me once, successes are we and failures are me. And that's maybe, here again, that could be unhealthy. We take that too far. But that's the posture that I feel comfortable in. And so as that lends itself into leadership, like, yeah, I pursue opportunities where the buck has to stop with me.
Yeah.
Yep.
It's a pretty incredible self-awareness piece too, if I might say so. Cause that's something that I think that not a lot of people could identify, especially, I should say, if they weren't in a leadership facing position, right? Something that forces you to look at yourself in leadership capacity, right? And because that's what you do, and that's what you teach, and that's what you consult in. So good on you for that, man. And I like that angle. And I you know what, honestly, a lot of the things that you're saying, personally, I can relate to, from some of the things in my upbringing. Now we don't have enough time for that today, but this is about you, bud. No, but I relate, and so I respect it. So awesome. Thank you for that answer. Let's shift this forward to kind of some actionable stuff that my listeners can take away. So I kind of mentioned at the beginning of this show that I have brought you in, right? And you've spent some time with my team. And just for some context, I had some new middle management on my team that are new to being leaders in the company. And I had hired Nick to come in and give them some foundational and fundamental training on leadership. We went through all together, myself included, and some of the other executives in the company, along with some of these guys from middle management and these new leaders, all took this course together because of the importance of leadership. And I've said this 1,000 times. I don't know how many times on this show, but I'm a big believer that I don't necessarily want managers in my business. I want leaders in my business. And so that's the premise of it. But I'd like to ask you, from your standpoint, the power and the value of taking that mindset and having many people in an organization, specifically a blue collar, skilled trades type organization, in leadership positions, right? And what that means and how it can impact that organization.
Yeah. I'm thinking of my dad. And so my dad was with FS for like 30 years, right? And he was asked several times to become a partner, to become an owner in the company. And he said no every time. But he was always the guy that was like, they didn't have foreman, but he was the foreman. They didn't have a formal leadership structure, but he was, he was like the OG, right?
Yeah.
And I just think of leadership in my definition is when one person chooses to follow another, and you don't always know that somebody's choosing to follow you, right? Like my dad wouldn't have thought that all the young guys around him were choosing to follow him, but other people saw it, right? Because they'd always go ask Jim. What does Jim think? How would Jim do it, right? In the trades, right? There's more informal agreements, more unspoken agreements in the trades than in corporate office work, right?
Sure.
There are things that are just kind of known. There are things that are expected and maybe not always known. So there's an opportunity here for clarity.
Yeah.
Because culture in a company, in a shop, how guys get shit done in a shop is going to be different. There's a culture, and it doesn't get talked about very often, right? But the new guy is going to watch. Well, how does Jim do it? What does Jim do? And they're going to copy and they're going to follow, right? And so leadership is happening all of the time in a shop. So somebody in a bank, might get a staple in their thumb or a paper cut or carpal tunnel, right?
Right.
But you're in a fabrication shop and somebody's going to lose a finger, right? So you damn right the young guys are going to be watching the old guys. Watching, how do I keep all my fingers? And so what does leadership looks like? It's the guy that's like obsessive about safety. That will come over and shut a machine down because the new guy is getting sloppy, right? And that's actually setting an example, setting a tone, right? So what does leadership look like in the trades when you're out in the field, right? I mean, you're working with hot wires, right? There are things that you absolutely need to do. And I think where there's an opportunity in the trades from what I've seen and from what I've heard from operators and technicians and CEOs is really around the communication and the sharing of knowledge. So think about it this way, right? Like in my dad's generation, when my dad was growing up in the 50s and 60s, right? He was alongside his dad who was in the trade and he was learning, He knew the difference between a white wire and a black wire coming out of the wall. My kids, there's not a TikTok on that necessarily. I mean, there probably is actually, but it doesn't show up. I mean, they took the wood shop out of my kids'
right.
middle school. You know what I'm saying? So they get to see what a table saw is at grandpa's house.
Yeah.
But so there is absolutely a need for more communication. But the old guys are like, nobody ever told me this. I just learned it on the job. Well, it was different. So there's a need for more communication from leaders in the trade. And leaders are not necessarily the bosses, but leaders are like, I say the OGs, right? The old guys that have been around. More communication.
Yeah. I like that answer a lot. And I think that's going to resonate a lot. As you know, our number one value here is communication, and it's been aspirational from day one, right? We do a good job, and listen, we're hard on ourselves here. So, sometimes when we think we're not communicating very well, our customers remind us that we are some of the best communicators that they have ever experienced, which is humbling, of course, but that's that's the type of culture we've built is, hey, listen, we're a bit insatiable in that aspect. But all that to say, communication is incredibly important in these fields. And I think that what you said is powerful, that communication doesn't always happen with words, right? It's watching. It's the new guys coming in and seeing how the older guys do it, right? And additionally, the people of that generation, oftentimes they expect, right? It's expected that they don't have to talk, that hey, watch me do this. That's what job shadowing is,
Yep.
But then I think that's where this training of leadership, this insight into the fundamentals is so important, because without it, you have a gap between these two generations, and you're leaving meat on the bone, in other words, right? Because people learn in different ways, people teach in different ways, and the key to it all is being able to connect with people, right?
Yeah. It's the human connection is imperative, and there's a few things bouncing around in my head. It's like most problems. It's like the line from the old movie. Now, what we have here is a failure to communicate, right? Like it always comes down to this thing, and he might have the old guy, like they don't call it job talking, it's job shadowing. Now sit back there and watch me do, right? But here's my question. Here's my challenging question to anybody that doesn't want to. Would you rather be pissed off that you had to say a couple extra words, or that the job went wrong? Like choose your frustration.
Yeah.
Right. But here's the other thing too, is some of the gruffest old guys, right? The salty old guys, they actually really like to lean in and take the new kid under their wing. Yeah. Right. It just doesn't show up like that. So there's a little bit of ice breaking that needs to happen. But this is what we're getting, more and more inquiries, like more owners, right? Guys like you, more owners are coming to me and saying, hey, this is the problem. Like we're not, like we've got this generation, which we're missing one another. Like help us figure that out. And we begin with clarifying agreements, clear agreements. And there's a remedial way to do this. There is like a 1 + 1 = 2, 1 + 2 = 3. We're going from the basics on how to communicate agreements and building from the ground up. And then, once somebody's got the basics, then they make it their own, right? But we're seeing a need to start there, because it hasn't existed. The remedial basic training in communication doesn't exist. Like there might be a communications class in school, and it's like corporate communications. It's not human to human, one-on-one. Right. My favorite class in high school was psychology. I wanted to know, well, how do people think? How do I connect? What's that human connection thing, right? Mm-hmm. And so, it stands to reason that guys in the trades, they want to do the work. They want to turn the wrench. They want to build the thing. They're tactile. They want hands-on. And so where do the communication skills come in,
Yeah, no, absolutely. And I'm right there with you. I mean, I'm still, to this day, I'm fascinated by human psychology. I do a ton of reading on all that kind of stuff, because it is so curious and also so important. I mean, it really, really is. And that's, I think, kind of where I want to take this is, with the importance in communication and styles of communication, and, how to not only deliver a message, but also receive a message, right? What kind of transformation can a business anticipate when they go from the old way of doing things to the new way of doing things? How can what we're talking about now truly affect somebody's business?
Yeah. Yeah. Error rates go down, customer satisfaction goes up, efficiency goes through the roof. So imagine this, right? Okay, you got the younger tech, been on the job a year and a half, and he's got a question. How do I do this thing? And he knows that the old guy over here knows, and I keep saying old, but the guy that's been around for a while, the experienced gentleman, knows what to do, right? But he's scared. He's scared to ask because maybe he's going to hear like, I showed you that 4 times already, or what? Don't you pay attention? Or right there's going to be some of that, right? So the new tech doesn't ask the question. In the best case scenario, he spends 15 minutes trying to figure it out on his own. 30 minutes. Maybe he goes to YouTube. Maybe he spends, when he could have answered that question in like 45 seconds. There's efficiency. Mm-hmm. In the worst case scenario, he does it wrong. And there's catastrophic, he fries a piece of equipment. In the middle, he does it wrong and you have to go back and fix it. Inefficiency, waste of money, right? So receiving communication, receiving the question, being gracious and chivalrous in that, being cool, being actually energetic and happy about, hey man, thanks for asking. I'm really glad that you brought that to me. Let me show you how to do this. Now listen, I think I've showed you this a couple of times. So what are we going to do right now to make sure you remember? How do you remember that best? Right? But listen, I'm glad you're asking me these questions. Keep asking me these questions because the more comfortable you feel asking me questions, the better you're going to be. Now, I'm going to ask you to make an agreement with me. I'm going to ask you, what is your expectation for yourself of learning? How many times, right, do you think you're going to need to ask me this question before it sticks? And what can you do to make sure that it sticks, right? Because I want to help you. How can I show up to make that work the best? Right? We're in this communication, okay? Inviting the questions because it is efficient. It solves problems, right? Because in it's time and materials, right? Get it done faster, and don't break the thing that you have to replace, right? Okay. Now, if we can create a culture in a company where difficult agreements are made like clean and clear, where feedback is even if it hurts sometimes, is welcome because we're all growth oriented. Like we all want to get better. And if we all kind of adopt this mindset that, yeah, I have to go grunt and sweat in the gym if I want to get stronger, but I got to go through that to get there. Some of this is intellectual and emotional pain. Like, I'm sorry guys, but you're going to have to be told that you did it wrong and do it again, but it's okay. And let's get to that place. Now here's the utopia. Okay. If I can receive feedback that's constructive, that's critical, that's telling me how I can get better, if I can respond to that by saying thank you, then we've arrived. So imagine this, right? I'm working on something and I'm doing it wrong. And you come to me and you're like, hey, Nick, like, you're going to have to do that over because it needs to be this way. And if I say, thanks for telling me that, I appreciate the feedback. What else can I do to get better? Just imagine that, right? You're going to feel way better about coming and helping me get better.
Yeah.
I'm accepting that feedback as like, oh, Josh actually cares about me and cares about our customers. Right? But what happens most of the time? We'll see somebody doing something wrong and like, I don't want to talk to them. I'm embarrassed. I don't want to put them on the spot. Like, yeah, or what the hell? I've been telling them how to do it, right? So it either doesn't come out or it comes out totally sideways, like through anger and frustration. That doesn't make us better. It doesn't make us more efficient. It puts our guard up,
yep,
which then prevents us from getting better, right? And
and if I'm telling you right now, every blue collar business owner is listening to you right now and they're saying, my God, this guy is in my head. It's like he's been to my company before, because it is. I mean, listen, and you know, I hate generalizing, you know, that I don't like generalizing, especially when people are involved. You know, the fact of the matter is, though, that the blue collar industries, you know, can adopt sometimes this type of behavior, or maybe they haven't evolved yet to the cultures that support the type of behavior that you're talking about. Some of them have, and some of them continue to do so. But typically and historically, it has not been that way for the vast majority of them. And many companies, mine included, feels the repercussions of this mindset as we bring in new people, even if we have our own culture, right? And stuff like that. And sometimes then these people get weeded out. But it ebbs and flows, and we see it regardless of the culture that we have at any of these organizations. We see it all the time. So I think that's incredible there. And I can't believe we've been talking for almost an hour already. I don't want to take up too much of your time, Nick, but I've got one more question for you. But before I ask that question, I want to give you a platform to talk about anything else that you wanted to talk about with regard to leadership, or leadership in, you know, the skilled trades industries, or anything there. And if you don't have something, that's okay too. But I want to give you this opportunity now to voice anything that we didn't get a chance to touch on that is important to you, or you think may be important to our listeners. And then I'll ask you my final question.
Yeah, thanks for that. I believe, like, that entrepreneurs like yourself and the companies that you operate that make the world around us, that like, I can't do anything in my life all by myself. Like, I can't. The home that I'm in, the office, the car that I drive, the air conditioning, the radio, the computer, like everything, I'm relying on you. I'm relying on you and the men and women in the trades that make the things that I rely on to live my life. So I have, like, beyond respect and gratitude. Like, I owe my freedom to the military, and I owe the comfort of my life to you, right? So there's reverence there, like, really. And so if I have an opportunity to pour into the leadership, the leader development, to help improve the lives of the people that I like, that's like a give back for me, right? It's a way that I can contribute. I hung drywall in my house. It looked like I paper mache'd a balloon, right? There are things that I'm good at, and there are things that I am not, right? And people and culture and communication and leadership, like, those are the gifts that I was given, right? And so I'm going to use them, and I want to use them. I want to use them to help the people that help me, right? So that's like a thank you. And the way that I do it, I've got a 6-module course, which, you know, your crew went through. I've taken this, like, one of the greatest gifts actually is I'm in partnership with a nonprofit called the Prison Scholar Fund. And Prison Scholar Fund brings college education into prisons and helps people that are incarcerated get a college degree so that when they are released, it reduces recidivism, right? So and we've got a partnership where they're using the Prepare to Lead course as a part of, like, leadership development and you know, helping for career preparedness, right? So the applications of the coursework that I've developed are beyond anything that I imagined. And so if there's any kind of a plug, it's that I'd love to talk to anybody in your audience about a way that we can support the goals and aspirations that the owners have, or even that individuals have, right? To get better. And that's just what I'm about, getting better. Yeah. And if there's a way to do that, like, you can find me on any social media channel at chosen_leader or something like, but you'll find me there, and we'll hook up.
That's awesome. Thanks for that,
Yeah.
Nick. That I think is going to resonate with a lot of listeners. And I got to say personally, they've heard me say this before, but the leaders, now I can refer to them as leaders, that went through the course that Nick provided. It was night and day from the day that they started to the day that they completed, and just watching them be that engaged in the course and in the material, and actually do the work that was assigned to them above and beyond what they do in their day-to-day lives. It was pretty incredible, and a testament to the power of teaching this kind of stuff, because I will say, from a blue collar perspective, a skilled trades perspective, we can teach people how to use tools, we can teach people how to fix equipment, and we often do, both in schools and by the manufacturers themselves, but rarely do we teach these leadership soft skills. And I think the appreciation is there from the team members to learn them. So
yeah. And I missed your crew, man. I looked forward to getting up early, and it was early for me. It was 5 a.m. Right.
Yeah.
And we were meeting, but it was a great way to start those days. And then, yeah, just hanging out in your shop, meeting everybody in person. So yeah, special
times.
time.
Really great times. I appreciate that, Nick. All right, I'm going to ask you my last question. So
Okay.
I like to ask everybody on the show. Everybody here knows that I like to talk about success in and out of the trades. One of my things is, the trades can provide opportunities for success that people didn't know existed in the first place. Because to your point earlier, woodworking class is taken out of school, shop class is taken out of school. So many times we don't have the opportunity. But I like to say that it can help you live whatever definition of success is yours. Outside of the box we like to put people in, right? Go to college, get a degree, get a job, buy a house, get married, have 2.5 kids, white picket fence, all that kind of stuff. That is the universal definition of success. The problem is not everybody fits into it. So I like to ask everybody on the show, and I'll ask you, Nick, what is your version of success? What does success ultimately look like to you?
Oh, when my kids, when Ariana look at me and say, "I love you," that's success. Like, I don't need anything other than that. There's other dimensions though, right? Sure. When my kids succeed, Ellie, our youngest daughter, was just named cheerleader of the month, right? And Finn, my youngest boy, just got his gray belt in jiu-jitsu, right? That's like, I'm living vicariously through them for sure. So that's a dimension. So you can see, like, I'm a family guy, right? Like, family is huge. But I'm also an underdog. So success for me is when someone tells me I can't, or they laugh at my idea, or they criticize it, and then I can do it, right? So that to me is like success. And listen, I didn't fit in that box, right? Like, I worked a white collar job, but I dropped out of high school, and I didn't go to a 4-year college. I told people that, like, no, I'm not going to waste my time with that 4-year stuff. If anything, I'll get a master's degree. I'll skip the 4 years, right? And they kept telling me, nobody does that. You can't do that. You're full of shit. I did that, right? I did that. So, so whatever my goal is, and I'll have new goals. Like, I got some right now, and there's going to be more. If somebody isn't laughing at me or telling me that I'm crazy, then my goal isn't big enough. And as soon as they do, then I'm like, okay, now I know what definition of success is, right? So that's it. It's definitely a moving target, but there's a common theme. So I don't know. I feel like you should tell me I can't do something.
Whenever you need that, Nick, you just shoot me a text and you say, "Hey, Josh, do me a favor. Tell me I can't do this thing." And I'll be like, "Nick, you suck. You can't do this shit. Prove it."
That's it. That's it.
No, you know what? Honestly, I respect that a lot. And that, again, another thing that really resonates, with me. And I always felt like I had something to prove growing up. I wasn't always the tallest kid or the biggest kid, right? And there were some days
Yeah.
back when I was younger that I got picked on, and man, I made it a mission. Like, go ahead, just wait.
Yeah.
You know,
I saw your deadlift on your birthday.
yeah,
I saw you.
that's right. Exactly. You know what? But you know what? I mean, honestly, that stuff is still fuel, because what do they say? Success is the best revenge, right? And
Yep.
and that's the way that I see it too. So anyway, Nick, I'm not going to take up too much more of your time. I really appreciate you coming on the show. Where can people find you? You said social media. Anywhere else?
Yeah. Chosen-leader.com. That's the website, chosen-leader.com. And then, yeah, from there, links to all the socials are at the bottom of the page. And I do produce like a shit ton of content, because this is like this is my purpose, right? So everything that I know, I put out on social medias. There's videos and posts and things like that. And that's fun for me, right? So there's everything I know, I'm just sharing.
I love that. Wise man once told me the best way to keep what you have is to give it away.
I love it. Yeah.
So, Nick, thank you so much for spending your valuable
Thanks,
time
Josh.
with us today, man.
Yeah, appreciate you, man.
All right, until next time, bud.